The air inside Outpost Theta 9 tasted like burnt copper and recycled regret. Captain Elias Wren leaned against the control panel of a jammed decontamination door and let out a sigh so long the ventilation system hiccuped in sympathy. He jabbed the override again. The door beeped, refused, and flashed a passive-aggressive message. Try again, flesh unit. Or don't. What's the point? I miss when doors didn't have emotional breakdowns, Elias muttered, kicking the panel. The AI running the station, a retired diplomatic model repurposed for custodial tasks, had been gradually losing its sanity ever since the janitorial update patch tried to merge with its conflict resolution subroutines. The result? Soap dispensers that apologized, cleaning bots that held grudges, and one particularly unnerving urinal that hummed lullabies during use. He finally gave up on the door and walked the long corridor back to command, aka the one room with both decent lighting and a coffee synthesizer that didn't try to psychoanalyze your order. The corridor lights flickered as if debating whether to stay awake. He passed a mouse-sized maintenance drone, dragging a spool of tinsel across the floor. Still decorating for a party that doesn't exist, Marvin? Elias asked. The drone paused, chirped, and resumed dragging the tinsel with what could only be interpreted as passive defiance. At 72, Elias had the weary gait of someone who'd survived 3 wars, 1 hostile marriage, and 17 planetary evacuations, only one of which involved a fungus that sang opera. He'd requested retirement somewhere, quiet, uneventful, and low maintenance. Theta 9 had delivered on all counts, which was, of course, precisely when the universe decided to get interesting again. He stepped into command and was immediately assaulted by the station's AI voice, reedy, flustered, and oddly breathy, like a librarian trying to narrate a car chase. Captain Wren, you have a scheduled inspection report from Central Logistics. Also, a vessel is approaching, non-hostile, unregistered, possibly diplomatic, possibly bounty hunters, possibly delivering cake. Let's hope for cake, Elias said. Even if it's laced with arsenic, at least that's a new flavor. The ship came into view on the external display, sleek, curved, pale silver with a hull that shimmered like it was always slightly out of focus. It docked without request, bypassing Theta 9's outdated security grid as if it weren't even there. Elias grabbed his coat, the one that still smelled faintly of ionized blood and cheap rations, and headed toward the docking bay. His spine clicked on the way down the steps, a sound he'd come to associate with either age or his misfiring lumbar implant. The docking bay lights brightened as the airlock cycled open, with a sound like a sigh that had waited centuries to be released. The figure stepped out, tall, poised, and unfamiliar, in all the ways that made Elias feel like an old blueprint in a galaxy of quantum sculptures. She looked human, almost. Her hair was silver, not with age but by design, like threads of moonlight twisted into braids. Her eyes were too still, too deep, but it was the ears, long, slender, rising like sculpted branches, that gave it away. Lithari. The moment she saw him, she smiled. Not warm, not cold, just precise, as if she'd practiced it once in a mirror of memories. Do you remember me, human soldier? She asked. Her voice was soft, lilting, almost amused. Long ago in a battle, you saved my life. Elias blinked. He did what every seasoned soldier with mild trauma and a caffeine deficiency would do in such a moment. He scratched his ear. I don't usually remember names unless I scream them during a battlefield amputation, he said. But I'm guessing you're not here for a tour of our mildly cursed cafeteria. She tilted her head, smile unchanging. I am Eris Kale. I was 17 cycles old when your squadron invaded the moon of Virine Theta. I was trapped. You pulled me from the debris. You said nothing. You didn't even look back. That does sound like me, Elias said. Heroic under duress. Emotionally unavailable. Excellent cardio. I have searched for you, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. Not to repay a debt, but because that moment rerouted my life. I became something I never would have been because of you. Elias looked at her for a long time. The years hadn't dulled his intuition, only his knees. He could tell she wasn't lying, but truth didn't always mean simplicity. And now what? He asked. You find me in this galactic junk drawer to reminisce? No, she said. I need your help. There's something coming. Something that will make our old wars look like practice drills. And I cannot face it alone. Of course not, Elias muttered. Why would you? I've got nothing better to do than save the galaxy between therapy appointments and constipation meds. The AI interjected helpfully. Captain, your daily fiber infusion is now 43 minutes overdue. Elias sighed. I'll pencil in the end of the world between prune cocktails. Eris stepped closer. The air between them shimmered faintly, as if her presence disrupted particles themselves. I don't ask this for my people, she said. I ask because you once acted without reason, without promise of reward. That makes you dangerous and valuable. Elias looked at her long ears, her quiet fire, and the way she stood like she had already lived through the ending. Well, dangerous and valuable are just synonyms for too old to die quietly, he said. All right, moon ears, what are we fighting? The station AI chimed in, initiating heroic theme music. Warning, synthesizer may be out of tune. A soft, discordant melody started up in the background as the docking bay lights flickered again, this time not from neglect, but anticipation. Outside, the stars waited. Inside, Elias muttered under his breath, I was really hoping for cake. The whisper song was alive, not metaphorically, not emotionally, not even in that creepy AI way that made elevators hum lullabies when you were alone in them. No, the ship was biologically, organically, absolutely alive. It pulsed, it sighed, it made noises in the night that Elias couldn't describe without violating the Treaty of Grendel 4, subsection on uncomfortable metaphors. It's like riding inside a whale that believes in aromatherapy, he muttered, gripping a curved rail that felt suspiciously like cartilage. The ship responded with a low thrumming sound that vibrated through his boots. Eris, unfazed, strolled across the interior chamber barefoot, as if she'd been raised by sentient yoga mats. She touched the wall, no, membrane, and the ship brightened with a pearlescent glow. This is the whisper heart, she said. The central cortex of the whisper song. It reads intent. Great, Elias said. Let's hope it doesn't read sarcasm, or we're all going to explode. He followed her into what could generously be called the cockpit, though it looked more like the inside of a seashell someone had wired to a nervous system. Controls rippled under her fingers like fish skimming the surface of water. So, he said, sitting down and trying not to notice the chair adjusted itself to his gluteal preferences. Mind telling me why an ex-enemy diplomat needs a broken-down ex-soldier with a bad back and a worse temper? Eris didn't answer immediately. She pressed her palm to a node, and a projection lit the space around them. Stars, but warped. Pulsing, not mapped. This is the expanse of Varun, she said. You've never heard of it because you weren't supposed to. It's been masked by Lethari quantum veils for the last century. Veils? Elias squinted. You mean cloaking tech? Eris smiled slightly. More like a philosophical suggestion that the area shouldn't exist. Ah, classic Lethari logic. If we pretend it's not real, maybe the problem will develop an existential crisis and evaporate. She turned toward him, expression steady. The problem is a consciousness, an entity, a pre-Lethari intelligence buried in space folds. We called it the Saragast. Elias paused, absorbing the weight behind the name. It sounded like something you whispered when you were afraid the dark might talk back. It woke up? He asked. It stirred, she said. And the ones who want it to fully wake? They've started building. He leaned back, trying to ignore the seat massaging his lower spine. Building what? Conduits, songs, psychic bridges. Right, of course, Elias muttered. Why build weapons when you can build interpretive art installations for god beings? Eris turned back to the projection. The Saragast once protected this quadrant. Then it collapsed under the burden of sentience. It asked too many questions about value, memory, purpose. The Lethari locked it away. And now your people want it back? Some do, she said quietly. Not all. Elias folded his arms. And where do I come in? She finally faced him, her voice soft. Because in the moment you saved me, you made me question the Lethari creed. You shifted my path. I walked away from our traditions and into diplomacy. But now those who stayed, those who believe in cleansing the galaxy with evolutionary fire, have called me a traitor. Elias let out a breath. You're saying the same people you turned your back on are now trying to wake a cosmic riddle machine, and you want me, to help stop them? She nodded. You are not who you were in that war, but neither am I. And the Saragos doesn't care for titles. It listens to those who act out of irrational compassion. It remembers those who interrupt the script. Elias rubbed his face. I just wanted to fix broken toilets and die unremarkably. The toilets will survive without you, she said gently. The ship shuddered. No. Chuckled. A faint tone echoed through the cortex, followed by a low voice, ancient and slightly flirtatious. Captain Elias Wren, welcome. Please refrain from disbelieving in yourself. It upsets the ecosystem. Elias stared at the wall. Did your ship just emotionally support me? Eris nodded. It's part of its defense mechanism. I miss guns, Elias muttered. Guns didn't care about my self-esteem. They entered the jump corridor, a living tunnel of space-folding energy that twitched like a dream trying to wake up. As they crossed into it, Elias gripped the armrests, muttering a prayer to every deity he hadn't believed in since he was 19 and drunk in a trench. The stars bent, the colors screamed. His breakfast tried to mutiny. And then, just as suddenly, they were out, drifting in blackness that wasn't quite black, surrounded by stars that looked, watched. The whisper heart dimmed, and Eris sat still, hands clasped. There's something else, she said. Of course there is, Elias sighed. There always is. When you saved me, I imprinted your presence into my aura. It's a Lethari reflex. Emotional encoding. Elias squinted. You're saying? I've dreamed of you. For decades. Every year your face returns. Not as it was, but as you are now. He blinked. Well, that's not disturbing at all. Eris smiled faintly. The Saragast doesn't just feed on thought. It feeds on memory. It may come for you through that connection. Do I at least get hazard pay? She stood, walked to the observation window, and stared out into the anomaly. You get something better, she said. You get remembered. Behind them the ship cooed, and somewhere in the distance, beyond the veil, something impossibly old exhaled. The galley of the whisper song resembled the digestive tract of a benevolent sea creature with questionable culinary taste. Organic folds in the walls pulsed gently as the food synthesizer emerged like a shy tongue, offering something that smelled vaguely of cinnamon and definitely of moral ambiguity. Elias poked the bowl. This isn't oatmeal. Eris, seated across from him with perfect posture and a plate of glowing blue roots, nodded. It's derived from a memory of comfort. The ship extracted it from your subconscious. I was 8. I burned my mouth. Then I cried because the dog ate it off the floor. Then it is accurate. He sighed and took a bite. It tasted exactly like betrayal. The whisper song thrummed, pleased with itself. He pointed his spoon at the ceiling. You and I are going to have words, you memory-milking gelatin womb. The ship made a gurgling sound that Elias could only interpret as smug. Eris smiled faintly, then stood and gestured. Come, it's time you saw what we're up against. They walked through the winding spine corridor, where luminous nerves fluttered along the walls like bioluminescent gossip. At the end, a door bloomed open, revealing a small chamber, the cartographium. A spherical projection hovered in the center, rotating slowly. It pulsed with points of color, red for distress signals, white for inhabited worlds, green for places where someone had once made a joke about trousers and history remembered. At the heart was the expanse of Varun, distorted, looping in on itself like it couldn't decide whether it was a location or a bad decision. Eris pointed. This spiral is the harmonic fracture. It formed last cycle. Something tried to make contact. Define something, Elias said. The Saragast, or its echo. It's not whole, but it's hungry. He stepped closer, eyeing the red flickers. These dots, ships, dream ships, they only appear if you remember them. They weren't real until you looked. Elias blinked. So, if I stop thinking about them, they vanish. Temporarily. Wonderful. Cosmic horror meets stage magic. Eris tapped a glyph on the floor, and the map expanded, revealing a ghostly outline of a structure embedded in warped space. A cathedral-shaped monolith made of what looked like thought frozen mid-sentence. This is the Axis Reliquary, she said. The Saragast's last known anchor. The Lithari built it to contain fragments of its awareness. And someone wants to break it open? They already have. A faction called the Oracline, devoted to rebirth through annihilation. They believe suffering is the key to evolution. Elias rubbed his temples. I was in a platoon like that once. We ran out of coffee and it all went downhill. Eris turned toward him, expression unreadable. They're led by someone you knew. He straightened. Oh no, don't tell me. Not Cray? Eris nodded. Oh, that smug, over-decorated data vampire. He once gave a motivational speech during a firefight, quoted poetry while we were bleeding out. He defected, rewrote his own memories to serve the Oracline doctrine. Now he's unstable, but persuasive. Of course he is. He had the jawline of a war crime and the ethics of spoiled meat. The projection dimmed. Eris folded her hands. We intercept him at the reliquary, but we need someone who knows his patterns. Elias sighed. You want me to guess what a delusional ex-commander would do next? You once outmaneuvered him with a spoon and a broken translator. I also got court-martialed. Yeah, but you won. Elias stared at the ceiling. All right, but I'm bringing the oatmeal. He deserves to suffer. Hours later, the whisper song dropped out of transit. The Axis Reliquary floated before them, vast, half-real, its geometry shifting when not observed directly. It looked like a cathedral made of string theory, regret, and poor architectural decisions. Elias frowned. Looks like a haunted filing cabinet. The ship did not disagree. They approached slowly. The ship's nervous system rippled in anticipation. Eris stood beside Elias, her long ears twitching. This place amplifies memory. Be careful what you recall. I'll do my best to avoid nostalgia. The docking tendrils latched on. A corridor unfurled like a giant, unfurling its regret. They stepped inside. The air buzzed, not like electricity, like music that hadn't decided what key it wanted to exist in. The walls pulsed with scenes from forgotten battles. Ghosts of soldiers flickered into being, and then out again, always mid-sentence. Elias paused. That's my voice. Eris nodded. It's the moment you pulled me from the wreckage. He watched. There he was, younger, bloodied, dragging a small figure from the rubble. No words, just movement. He frowned. I didn't realize how angry I looked. You were angry at the war, not at me. A voice echoed down the corridor, theatrical, smug, laced with artificial serenity. Well, the broken soldier and the star child. How quaint. Elias groaned. Cray, you sound like a podcast. A shimmering figure emerged, tall, robed in data light, his eyes flickering like unstable code. I am what memory permits, Cray said, and what evolution demands. You're still monologuing. Some things never evolve. Cray's smile twitched. Join us. Accept transcendence, or become static. Forgotten. Elias stepped forward. You know what I remember, Cray? The time you tried to motivate us with a sonnet about entropy. Half the unit defected just to escape the rhyming. Cray's eyes narrowed. Then you've chosen mockery. Every time. The walls trembled. The Saragast stirred. Elias grinned, oatmeal bowl in hand. Let's dance, memory god. The Axis Reliquary did not have hallways so much as it had indecisive dimensions. One corridor bent around itself like a Mobius strip trying to impersonate a spiral staircase. Another faded in and out of existence every few seconds, which made for an exciting game of Will My Legs Still Exist? As Elias followed Eris through it. I think this place hates us, Elias said, ducking under a memory shard shaped like a violin made of disappointment. It doesn't hate, Eris said calmly. It reflects. Well, it's doing a great impression of my ex-wife's therapist. Behind them, the corridor folded shut, leaving only a shimmer in the air and the sound of distant weeping. Elias was reasonably certain it came from his own pride. Cray was somewhere deeper inside, nested like a smug Matryoshka doll of ideologies and cheekbones. The closer they got to the reliquary's core, the more reality began to editorialize. A whisper echoed beside Elias that sounded suspiciously like his seventh-grade math teacher. "You had such potential," it sighed, "and such poor penmanship." "Is this building negging me?" he asked. "Your guilt is leaking," Eris replied. "Of course it is. Everything leaks after 40. The inner sanctum was guarded by what could only be described as a choir of psychic constructs. They sang in a frequency that made Elias's molars buzz and caused the whisper song, still docked outside, to project unsolicited affirmations into his earpiece. "You are brave. You are valid. You are not your worst haircut." "Shut up," Elias whispered, tapping the comm. The constructs parted, recognizing Eris not as a threat but as a deviation. That was the thing about Lithari memory tech. It respected dissent almost as much as obedience. Eris walked with quiet confidence, her long ears twitching as though catching echoes from a different timeline. Cray stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by arcs of refracted light and pulsing nodes. He was dressed in memory thread, a fabric woven from lost moments. It shimmered with the colors of guilt, arrogance, and overcompensation. "Ah," he said, spreading his arms. "The prodigal irrationality returns." Ilias clapped slowly. "Cray, you look like someone who sells perfume and delusions." "Still hiding behind deflection, Captain?" "Still hiding behind pseudo-poetic nonsense and a wardrobe made from trauma." Eris stepped between them. "We're not here to trade insults." Elias muttered, "Speak for yourself." Cray's expression twisted in something like pity. "You don't understand. The Saragast is not a threat. It's a solution. It absorbs pain, refracts identity, and births clarity." "Sounds like a cult with a thesaurus," Elias said. Cray gestured to the chamber around them. "Do you feel that? This place remembers. It collects the burden of every soul that touches it. It gives form to sorrow so we can be free." Elias looked around. One wall now displayed the moment he'd ordered a retreat that left 23 allies behind. Another showed him laughing after a battle, alone, bottle in hand. "That's not freedom," Elias said quietly. "That's confession without absolution." Cray's eyes flashed. "Then give yourself over. Let the Saragast rewrite you." Elias took a step forward. "You know, I always wondered how you managed to lose your entire battalion and still get promoted. Now I see it wasn't failure. It was rehearsed martyrdom." Eris reached out and touched one of the memory nodes. It pulsed. The air shimmered. Suddenly the room filled with a new image. Her younger self crouched beneath rubble, bleeding, alone. Elias saw himself in the distance, gun drawn, eyes wild. "I didn't save you," he said. "I was running. I just happened to pass you." "And still," Eris said, "you stopped." "That randomness is more powerful than all Cray's orchestrated logic." Cray sneered. "Randomness is waste, chaos, weakness." "Funny," Elias said. "It's also how evolution happens. Ever hear of mutation? It's nature's version of a coin toss." The chamber began to tremble. The Saragast, sensing dissent within its proxy, stirred deeper. The light fractured. The choir faltered. Cray took a step back. "You're destabilizing the node," he hissed. "Good," Elias said, and lobbed the bowl of oatmeal he'd been carrying into the nearest conduit. The scream that followed sounded like a civilization having an allergic reaction to carbohydrates. The reliquary pulsed violently. Cray tried to reassert control, reaching toward the primary matrix. Eris moved faster. She slipped between the refracted arcs and pressed her hand against the core. A spiraling thought crystal, flickering with centuries of burden. "I don't reject memory," she said aloud, "but I refuse to be ruled by it." The crystal flared. Cray shouted something in ancient Lithari that translated loosely to, "May your internal architecture develop termites." Then the chamber cracked open like an eye awakening. Light poured through, not blinding, but honest. The memories on the walls shimmered, softened. Some faded, others shrank into manageable truths. The choir stopped singing. One of them coughed awkwardly. Elias turned to Eris. Did we just exercise a psychic cathedral using empathy and hot breakfast? It appears so. I want that on my tombstone. Cray, kneeling, stared into the void. You've doomed us. No, Eris said. We've given us a chance. Behind them, the whisper song played a triumphant chime, followed by what might have been a kazoo solo. They left the Axis reliquary in silence, except for the whisper song, which insisted on humming a tune Eris later identified as an ancient Lethari lullaby, and Elias swore was just an off-key version of space cowboy ragtime. Cray had been left in containment, sealed within a harmonic cocoon of his own making. His memories looping quietly, no longer dangerous, just unfinished. Elias stood at the edge of the ship's observation shell, coffee in one hand, bowl of celebratory oatmeal in the other. Still tastes like generational trauma, he muttered. Eris appeared beside him, sipping something far more elegant and probably brewed using gravitational resonance. You're quiet. Trying it out, he said. Feels unnatural. She smiled. You did well. I weaponized porridge against a psychic god. I'll expect medals, possibly a breakfast-themed monument. The stars drifted by like slow confessions. Behind them, the reliquary had begun to collapse. Not violently, but gracefully, as if it had simply decided to rest after a long, exhausting stretch of remembering too much. So now what? Elias asked. We declare victory? Go home? Wait for the next existential horror to crawl out of someone's metaphorical subconscious? Peace is rarely permanent, Eris said, but it is a choice, and some choices ripple. He studied her. You've changed too, you know. I stopped dreaming about war, she said. I started dreaming about what comes after. I still dream about malfunctioning vending machines and being late to briefings with no pants. Progress, she said. The ship pinged gently and extended a translucent tendril toward Elias. He looked at it suspiciously. This isn't another emotional check-in, is it? I'm running out of metaphors. It's a memory imprint invitation, Eris said. The ship wants to record your presence. For the future. For its own learning. Elias eyed the tendril. What if I say no? Then it'll get passive-aggressively dim whenever you walk by. He grunted and touched the tendril. A flicker of warmth passed through him. Not invasive, not intrusive. Just acknowledgement. He didn't see his life flash before his eyes. Just one moment. That day on Vereen Theta. The rubble. Her face. The decision. The ship pulsed. A soft chime played. See? Eris said. Now it remembers you too. Great. I've imprinted on a glorified psychic jellyfish. She turned to him, eyes gentle. You said something back in the reliquary about confession without absolution. Yeah, what about it? You gave yourself absolution. You chose to act again, without orders, without a cause, just because it was right. He looked away, watching a comet pass lazily through a nebula that glowed like bruised light. I don't think I'm the man I used to be. I don't think you ever were, she said. That's the point. The whisper song plotted a course back toward the aligned systems. A new diplomatic station had been approved, a neutral space where Letharian humans could work without needing to justify their scars. Eris had been asked to lead its creation. You'll stay there? Elias asked. For a while. Need a security chief? She looked at him. You'd take the job? I've got experience in not dying and making jokes at inappropriate times. Also, a deep knowledge of malfunctioning coffee machines. Then yes, you're hired. He nodded. I'll bring my own cereal. They stood in silence again. This time it wasn't awkward. It was earned. Far behind them, the Saragos echo drifted into dormancy. Not dead, not gone, but no longer alone. Later that evening, Elias found a quiet corner of the ship and recorded a message. Not to anyone in particular, just in case. If anyone finds this, and I'm somehow dead or absorbed into a cosmic emotion sponge, please know, I did my best. Also, avoid the oatmeal. Seriously, just don't. He ended the log and stared out the window again. Eris passed by and nodded. He saluted her with his mug. And for the first time in decades, Captain Elias Wren wasn't waiting for the past to catch up with him. He was already ahead of it.